Typically, when we're in business, there are some service lines or product lines which make more margin, more profit than others. So the natural proclivity for business leaders is to focus on the service lines that make more money and kind of abandons the ones that don't. And in the US, General Motors, Daimler, Chrysler, and a couple of other players who were making very big, what they call trucks in the US, these very big cars, Jeep, right? And they were making a lot of money on the big cars. And then on the small cars, they were making a little bit of money. So they thought, well, you know, and then Toyota came into the US, and Toyota started selling cars in the US, and they were competing with these companies on the small cars. And all of them, General Motors, Jeep, Ford, were like, yeah, it's too little profit. So we leave it, and we let Toyota do it. It's the biggest mistake I watch entrepreneurs make, and business leaders make it too. It's called seeding market in areas that are non-core. And what you do is, if you seed market in areas that are non-core, you give your competitor time to breathe and room to grow. Because then what happens is Toyota now owns that area of the market without competition. Which means even if they make a tiny bit of margin, they don't have to worry about a competitive short-term dynamic. So immediately what happens is they start thinking differently. They start investing more money.
And then they build capital to take you on in another area.
And you know where they'll go? Because it's the innovator's dilemma. They don't make enough margin here. So where will they go? They go up. In other words, you left them in a small space to focus on the big space. What you didn't realize was you were giving them room to build up capital so they can fight you in the big space. So Toyota starts migrating up, right? So Toyota starts making bigger cars. They do it first with what was called a Sienna. Then they made the Camry, which we know in South Africa very well. They made the Cressida, which we know in South Africa very well. And all they were doing was they were migrating up to larger cars. Now, the problem with Toyota was they were making their cars in Japan, exporting them to America. And for the American person, or the average US person, it was still a Toyota. It represented reliability and quality, but it didn't quite represent opulence and luxury. And they were making really good cars. So one day, the story is told like fable, but they're sitting in a board meeting. And one day they're having a conversation about what are we going to do with this problem? And they thought the problem was about pricing. And out of nowhere, a little voice from the back said, this is not a pricing problem, it's a brand problem. We've built a brand that represents one thing. We have a market that associates our brand with one thing. We're trying to sell them something different. So we should just, rather than change the car, just change the logo on the car.
So that even if the car is amazing and brilliant and it fights the Mercedeses and the BMs,
100%.
The fact that it's still called a Toyota,
it's a Toyota,
is what's stopping us. So let's change it.
You know how you know when you're driving the wrong cars? If I ask you what car you drive and you tell me the derivative, not the brand. So if I said, what do you drive? You drive GT. You say, I drive a GT86. You don't tell me I drive a Toyota Coupe.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Because the person who drives an Aston Martin doesn't go, I drive a DB9 or a Vanquish. You ask, what do I drive? I drive an Aston Martin.
I drive a Bentley.
Do you get it? I drive a Bentley. I don't need to tell you if it's a Mulsanne or if it's Continental or it's a Bentley.
Okay, so you say a little voice in the boardroom spoke up.
So the voice says, change the logo. And they go, what do we call it? Well, and they go through this process and the answer was, what is it? It's a luxury product. What do? We export it. And to whom? To the US. So what is this thing? It's a luxury export to the US.
Lexus.
It's a Lexus. We'll just call it a Lexus. And they created the brand Lexus. And now today, Lexus is the third largest luxury brand in the US.
Thinking simply, using what you have, and keeping your eye on the prize.
I watch entrepreneurs make this mistake all the time. They don't win market share. They think the problem is the product. Sometimes the problem is what people think the product is. You just got to change the brand of the product. The thing's fine. It works. You get an HP and an Apple do exactly the same thing, right? But you pay a 40% premium on the other because you associate something with the brand.